It was the summer of 1999. Yeah, good year, right? For all of you that weren't even born yet. Yes, summer of 1999. This was a time when shore dolls were super popular, and not because they were retro cute, mind you, but because they had just become a thing. A time when people were getting ready for the end of the world with Y2K quickly approaching. You can Google that later if you don't know what that is. It was the summer of 1999 when people were trading Pokemon cards. The first time. When Ricky Martin's Livin' La Vida Loca topped the charts. Yeah. And I had just done one of the most super crazy adult things I had ever done in my life up to that point. I waited in line all night long to get tickets for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I know. And then I slept through it because I waited all night to get the tickets. But it was the summer of 1999, and on top of all of that wonder and awe, I was on a camp team with Ozark Christian College, and we were getting ready to head out to CIY Summer Conference. Now, what is summer conference, you ask? Well, that's what they called Move back in my day, okay? And it's basically exactly the same thing. I mean, not much has changed. I'm looking around here and I'm seeing you guys have multiple engaging videos, Insta scavenger hunts. You've got opportunities to go to Ireland, and I think there was a walking taco around here somewhere. That's basically what summer conference looked like. I mean, we were, really getting into PowerPoint back then. And there were some pretty cool skits that happened. Oh, and we had two options for t-shirts. So basically the same thing. Not much has changed. But it is really, really good to be back here 17 years later. It's so fun to walk down memory lane. Memories are so much fun. They're so exciting. They're so sweet. But let me tell you something. Memories are not just fun. Recently, I was doing some research on the power of memory, and I learned some really interesting facts. I want to share some of them with you tonight. Did you guys realize that our brains are not the only thing that holds memory? Here, let me ask you this question. How many of you guys have had or currently do have braces on your teeth? Yeah, me too. Okay, so what do you get after your braces come off? You get a retainer. And what happens to your teeth if you don't wear your retainer? They go right back to what they know. It's like the braces were the short-term memory, right? Quickly forgotten. But as soon as that retainer comes out, those teeth move back into their comfortable position. They go right back to what they know. And I may or may not know that from experience. And how many of you guys used to ride your bike all the time when you were kids? Right? How many of you have not ridden a bike in at least a year? Okay, but do you think you still could? Sure you can. Where do you think we get the phrase? It's just like riding a bike, right? Our muscles have memories. They can pick right back up where they left off. So cool. I thought this fact was also really interesting. Research has shown that our memory begins in the womb. 20 weeks after conception, we start remembering things. That's awesome. And here's a super important fact. This is really important, so listen to this one. The human brain continues developing, continues forming, all the way up to age 25, sometimes beyond. So youth leaders in the room, this is why your students keep doing stupid things. They literally have half a brain. This should be encouraging to you. You're welcome. Here's a fun one. Okay, so there's a lot of movies out there that have tried their hardest to display amnesia and what happens to the person's mind when they get this amnesia, this short-term memory loss. But all of these movies do a terrible job. Like, think about 50 First Dates, Groundhog Day, terrible. But it turns out there is one movie character who actually depicts amnesia really, really well. Dory! You're right. Isn't that so fun? Way to go, Disney. Good job. And one last thing. Have you ever noticed how a certain scent, a smell, an odor can bring back really vivid memories? Like maybe you walk into your friend's kitchen one day and her mom's baking cookies, and all of a sudden you're just like instantly whisked away to your grandmother's kitchen years ago, just takes you there. Or like the next time you all smell an influx of Axe products, you're going to remember that time you were at Move in Ohio. Boys. But here's the thing. It's so cool how our smell and our memory, they're connected because, little science lesson for you, our olfactory nerve, which gives us our sense of smell, is right next to the hippocampus, which is what gives us our memories. And research shows that actually, like when the part of our brain is damaged that has to do with our memories, oftentimes our sense of smell is also impaired. That's how closely they work together. And other research said that when you're studying information, like when you're studying for a test, if you smell a really potent odor, it actually makes that information come to life. It makes it much more vivid. And when you smell that same scent again, all of that information will come flooding back. So maybe that's where the Axe products can come in. I don't know. Figure something out. So memories are fascinating. Our memories are what make us who we are. They're what build us up. They're what make us unique. And memories are so fun. Walking down memory lane with my kids, it's such a sweet experience. But I think every single one of us knows that memories are not always fun or funny or fascinating. Sometimes memories can be really, really cruel. Sometimes they can be utterly devastating. Yeah, our memories can take us to some incredibly joyful places, but they can also hold us captive and crush our soul. And no one knows better the wide spectrum and ability that memories have than our friend Peter. Open up your Bibles to John chapter 21. Now, Jesus has just risen from the dead. And Peter was one of the 2 disciples who actually got to go to the tomb and see with his very own eyes that it was, in fact, empty. And since that time, Jesus has popped in and out, and he's appeared to his disciples just to prove to them that he really is alive, and he's reminding him that this is exactly what he said would happen, and he is exactly who he said he was. And now we're going to pick up Peter's story, post-resurrection, in the final chapter of the Gospel of John, and we're going to start right here in verse 1. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee, and it happened this way. Simon, Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Now, right off the bat, there's 2 things that we need to take note of here. Okay, first of all, this is John the disciple who's writing this text. And what does John call Peter? He calls him Simon. Now, you guys were here the other night. You heard this story. Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter. Jesus said, "On this rock I will build my church." And that name, Petros, that we translate Peter, that means rock. That was a transformational moment for Peter. And that was years ago. He hasn't been called Simon since. Until now. Now, at first glance, you might think that's some kind of coincidence. But if you ever study the Gospel of John, you will soon find that nothing is coincidence. John is a very symbolic writer, and if he calls Peter Simon, he's making a point. Now, the second thing we see here is that Peter's going fishing. Okay, it may not seem like a big deal, but if you think about it, it's been 3 years since he's gone fishing. It was 3 years ago that Jesus called Peter out of that fishing boat, told him to drop his nets and start fishing for men instead, and Peter never looked back. Until now. Post-resurrection. Post the most incredible thing that has ever happened or will ever happen in the history of the world, and now he's going fishing? What does this mean? Well, it's kind of like this. Have you ever gone to your favorite restaurant? The restaurant where you know exactly what to order because you order the exact same thing, the exact same way, every single time, like you could order in your sleep, that restaurant. But have you ever gone to that restaurant and one night you just decide, I'm ordering something different. I'm going to do it. I mean, my old standby, it's good. It's comfortable. I know it. Me and it, we have this understanding. But tonight, I'm feeling adventurous. And so you look at the menu and you decide to order something you can barely pronounce, but you're super stoked to try it because it looks delicious. And the food comes, and it turns out it is delicious. And bonus, it's actually really good for you too. But here's the problem. You don't actually know which fork you're supposed to use. And you're not really sure which parts of this meal you're supposed to eat and which parts are just for show. And you end up making a whole big mess out of everything, and you just feel really, really dumb. So what's the first thing you say to yourself when you leave the restaurant that night? I should have ordered what I always order. Next time I come back here, I'm going with what's safe. Next time I come back here, I'm going with what I know. And that's where we find Peter. Peter tried to be a disciple to the rabbi. Peter tried to control his temper and to tame his tongue. Peter tried to learn gentleness and servanthood. Peter tried to be faithful. He tried, but he failed. And now Peter's come to the conclusion that he's not quite cut out for this, that he doesn't have what it takes to fulfill the commission of the Lord. He feels unworthy, and he feels inadequate. And so Peter's going back. He's going back to the same old name and the same old game. Memories. Let's pick it back up. Verse 4. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll find some." And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." So here these guys are. They have been out there all night, and they haven't caught a thing. And you need to understand, it's not because they've forgotten how to fish. This was these guys' livelihood. They grew up doing this since they were boys. Remember muscle memory? It's just like riding a bike. Even though it's been 3 years, they pick those nets up. They are professional fishermen. And let me tell you something. Nothing annoys a professional fisherman more than when some landlubber rolls up and says, "Hey, why don't you try throwing your net on the other side?" I mean, I imagine the disciples were probably like, "Yeah, after you try shutting your yapper," right? I mean, let us do our job, man. We know what we're doing. But for whatever reason, maybe it was to prove to this silhouette standing on the beach that he's a complete moron, they go for it. They throw their nets back in, and this time they throw them on the right side. And immediately, the nets are full. So full, they can barely pull them in. And John turns to Peter. Yes, that's John, who calls himself the disciple whom Jesus loved. He was a teenage boy, can you tell? John says to Peter, "I think it's the Lord." And I just imagine Peter saying, "Yeah, you think?" Because he's been here before. He's seen this exact scenario play out, hasn't he? Jesus is playing to Peter's memory. Luke chapter 4. When they first met on that beach, the very first day that Jesus called him. Well, Peter knows exactly who it is. Memories. Back to verse 7. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It's the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. I just love this moment. Can I just say, classic Peter. I love it. He jumps first and he thinks second. Now, if this is me in the boat and I see Jesus, I'm excited, I'm totally pumped, and I realize, yes, if I swim to shore, I can get to him faster. Bonus, I've already taken off my robe so it can stay dry. I'm swimming in my underpants, right? That's what I would do. But no, not Peter. It's like, Jesus must swim. Oh, clothes. I will get fully and completely dressed, and the only dry thing I have. Cannonball, right? There's no stopping him. This is Peter. You just can't stop the guy's enthusiasm. But I got to ask you, what goes through Peter's mind as soon as he hits that ice-cold seawater? He's just seen Jesus. Adrenaline is pumping through his veins, and he feels the spray from the wind and the waves. He's been here before. The book of Matthew, the night that Jesus walked out to the disciples on the water. And he's remembering every moment. Now again, I don't understand why Peter said what he said. In my mind, I'm like, why didn't Peter just say, hey, Lord, if it's you, fly into the boat, right? That would have proved it. Or, hey, Lord, if it's you, fill our nets up with fish like you did before, then we'll know. But no, it's Peter. Hey, Lord, if it's you, I want to come out there too. I'll do it. Peter, we know, man. I don't know why that's the first thing that came out of his mouth. Maybe some of you with the half a brain issue can explain that better. But for whatever reason, that night, Peter jumped out of the boat and he walked on that water in faith for a moment. But then he began to doubt, and then he began to sink. And Jesus came and he pulled Peter out of his weakness and into his strength. Memories. Let's keep reading. Verse 9. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you've just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. And none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. So Jesus came, he took the bread, and he gave it to them. And he did the same with the fish. This is now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So the guys get to shore, and they realize that Jesus is making breakfast. And he invites them to come sit with him, and the first thing Jesus does is he breaks bread, and he shares it with his friends. Oh man, the memories are coming back fast now. Do you know where Peter's going? He's going back to the last meal that he just had with his Messiah in John chapter 13. Jesus sat down at that table, he broke bread, and he gave it to his disciples. And then he told them exactly what was going to happen. He said to these guys, where I'm going, you cannot follow. And in classic Peter fashion, he pipes up and says, why, Lord? Why can I not follow where you're going? I'd follow you anywhere. I would die for you. And Jesus says, really, Peter? Would you die for me? Because the truth is, before the rooster crows in the morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And of course, in that moment, Peter couldn't believe that. He wouldn't believe that. He was offended that Jesus would even imply such a thing. But a lot's transpired since then. And as they sit by this charcoal fire on the beach in John chapter 21, Peter's memory takes yet another turn. Because when is the last time we saw him next to a charcoal fire? The night Jesus was arrested. Luke chapter 22. Peter was full of courage that night. He followed those guards that took Jesus. He followed them all of the way to the high priest's house. He was probably making a plan of attack the entire time, and he was probably singing his own theme music because it's Peter. He's always got an idea. He's always ready for action. You know, he might have missed Malchus in the garden that night by a couple of inches, but if they tried to kill Jesus, man, he wasn't going to miss. Not this time. But something happened to him. Because when he went inside the gate at the house of the high priest, he felt a new sensation come over him. And this time it wasn't courage. And as he sidled up to that fire so that he could kind of get a closer look, that big, strong, sword-swinging fisherman was approached by a tiny, unassuming servant girl. And when she asked, "Aren't you with him?" Peter said no. And he said it again and again. And in that moment, over the smoke of a charcoal fire, Peter locked eyes with his master and his friend, and he watched them take him away to be beaten and crucified. See, Jesus had warned Peter, but Peter didn't hear it. Jesus had tried to pull Peter into his faithfulness, but instead Peter landed in failure. memories. And as that devastating story is playing out in Peter's head, all of a sudden, here in John chapter 21, he and Jesus lock eyes again over the fire. And this is the conversation that ensues. Verse 15. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Now, we've all been here before. We've betrayed a friend. We've disobeyed a parent. We've let down somebody we love. And we said we were sorry, and we meant every word, but even when they came back to us and said, "Hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. I forgive you," it just didn't seem like enough. Like we wanted to do something more. There had to be something that we could do to prove our loyalty, to prove our love, to prove that we could be trusted again. No, it's over. Just let it go. But we couldn't let it go. Because we may be forgiven, but we cannot forget. And that's where Peter's at right now. He remembers denying Jesus. And here Jesus is talking to him in this moment. And you would think that Jesus would know how hurt Peter is, how bad Peter feels. And you would think maybe Jesus would take it kind of easy on the guy, right? But no, instead, right there in front of all the other disciples, Jesus questions Peter's love for him. But he doesn't just question his love. He does it using that same old underwhelming name. "Simon, son of John, do you love me? Simon, son of John, do you love me? Simon, son of John, do you love me?" 3 times. 3 times. And we know for sure this time this is not a coincidence. 3 times Jesus asks him the question, and 3 times Peter has to respond, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." 1 time for every time Peter denied he even knew him. Wow. This seems really, really harsh, right? Like, come on, Jesus. Why you gotta play like that? But maybe not. Maybe there's more. Now, I don't know a lot about mental health and emotional healing, but I do know this. When an individual wants to deal with pain from their past, they have to bring it directly to their present. You cannot ignore it. You cannot bury it. You cannot pretend it didn't happen. And Jesus knows that the best thing for Peter right now, as much as it may hurt, is to face his failures and to name them one by one. But that's not the only thing Jesus is doing. Have you ever played on a team before? Any sports team, a team of any kind. Have you ever played on a team where people were relying on you? They were relying on you to make the right move at the right time to accomplish the right goal. And have you ever failed that team? Have you ever screwed up so royally that you found yourself sitting on the bench? And your team comes over and they offer you high fives and they slap you on the back and they say, "Hey, don't worry about it, man. We all have our off nights, right?" But nothing they say can fix this. Nothing they say is going to make this better. There is only one thing that's going to help right now: redemption. All you need is for the coach to put you back in the game. All you need is a second chance to prove to them and to prove to yourself that you can do this. See, at first glance, this interchange between Jesus and Peter, it seems heart-wrenching. It is heart-wrenching. I can't imagine sitting face-to-face to my Savior after some of the things that I've done. And for him to name my failures like that, no, I can't. But catch this. This exchange between these two is actually one of the most beautiful exchanges between Jesus and anyone else in Scripture. Because in this moment, Jesus doesn't just forgive Peter, he commissions him. 3 times. "Peter, do you love me?" 3 times. "Yes, Lord, so much. And 3 times, Jesus says, then get back in the game. I never gave up on you, Peter. Don't you give up on me. Feed my lambs. I want you to take care of my sheep, Peter. It's time to get to work. Feed my sheep. Now, Jesus doesn't promise Peter from this moment forward that everything's going to be roses. In fact, he tells him, if you choose to leave your boat behind, your future is going to look a little grim. And so now Peter has to make a choice. He can choose to deny Jesus a 4th time and go back to his boat. Or he can move forward with whatever Jesus has in mind. What's he going to do? Some of you are facing this very same dilemma this week. Memories. Memories. They can be so sweet, can't they? But they can also be really, really cruel. And as we see Peter in John chapter 21, walking down memory lane and finding himself going back to the same old name and the same old game, I imagine there's some of you sitting there right now wondering if that's going to be your story too. Some of you this week, you got adventurous and you tried something new. You tried sharing your weaknesses. You tried exposing your pain. And now your whole life is on display for everyone in your youth group, and to be perfectly honest, you don't like it. They said that there would be healing with confession, but you're not really sure when that's going to come or if it's going to come at all. And you're sitting there tonight thinking, Peter's big failure was to say that he didn't know who Jesus was? Mine's way worse than that. I guarantee you that if that was me in that fishing boat that day, Jesus would have stood on the shore and said, have a nice trip. Because he doesn't want me. He can't use me. Peter thought he was unworthy. I am unworthy. If that's where you're at tonight, I want you to hear me right now. No, you're not. There is not a doubt in my mind that the sin that you've committed and the burden you bear is heavy and horrible, no doubt. But were you here last night? Were you in this room? Did you hear the truth of the gospel? Whatever that sin is, he died for that sin. And when you refuse to accept the gift of his life for your salvation, you're telling them that he died for no reason. No, child, you are incredibly worthy because it is finished. I want you to listen to this truth from Galatians chapter 3. This is for you. Galatians chapter 3, verse 20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I understand. I get it. You believe that your failures have made you unworthy to be a part of what God is doing in the world right now. But can I let you in on a crazy truth? Sometimes our greatest failures give us the deepest faithfulness. You know in a very personal way just what's at stake. And you now know in a very personal way that you are worthy because he is worthy. Trust him. Now, some of you experienced something a little bit different this week. It's not so much that you feel unworthy, just more inadequate. Because you played the intimidation game this week. You came and you saw what other people could do. You saw how they prayed, you saw how they read, you saw how they answered questions, you saw how they played sports, you saw how they confessed, you saw how they just fit in, and you feel like you don't. And you're sitting there tonight thinking, I'm pretty sure God's looking for somebody who can interpret Scripture a little better. I'm pretty sure he's looking for somebody who's got their future on lock. I'm pretty sure he's looking for somebody with more of a dynamic personality than I have. So I'm going to do everybody a favor, and I'm going to stay out of the way. I'm going to do everybody a favor, and I'm going to go back to my boat. Question. Who were the first people that the Lord called into his service? Were they the people who had everything all figured out? Were they people who had something substantial to offer the world? No, actually, quite the opposite. Jesus called 4 fishermen, a tax collector, a greedy treasurer, a doubter, and 5 other men with no notable reputation. If you're feeling inadequate right now, you're in good company. And here's the truth I want to share with you. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of this world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus. He has become our wisdom, our righteousness, our holiness, our redemption. You see, discipleship is not about how excellent and devoted and spectacular the follower is. Discipleship is all about the excellence and devotion and superiority of the one we follow. So trust him. So here you are. You have been here all week, and you have been on a journey. You followed. You saw him for who he was. You called him Messiah. And then you failed him. It hurts, but it's true. And you heard the gospel message. You know that you're forgiven, and that means the world to you. But just because you're forgiven doesn't mean you've forgotten. And so just like teeth move back to their most comfortable position without the retainer, just like muscles pick right back up where they left off, you have not yet fully trusted in the power and the redemption of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And because of that, you have let your memories take you back to those same old places, to that same old destruction, to that same old rut, to that same old unbelief, to that same old complacency. So it's time to make a choice. We're drawing a line. Behind you is your boat, and it's comfortable, and you know it. It's manageable. Quite frankly, it's easy. It's a part of who you are. It will always be a part of who you are. The question tonight is, will it be all you ever are? Because in front of you is a different option. And just like he did with Peter, he's standing before you, arms outstretched. And he's asking you again, will you follow me? Will you follow me? Now, this is entirely different, because you don't know for sure where this will lead you, and you don't know what you're going to be asked to do. You could be taken clear outside of your comfort zone. There could be surprises around every corner. But I can guarantee you one thing. You can trust him. You can trust him. So you're standing between what lies behind and what lies in front of you. Here you are between everything you've always been or the person you could potentially become. You're standing between living a life entirely for yourself or living a life that the Lord can use to move his kingdom forward. Which are you going to choose? He hasn't given up on you. Don't you give up on him. It's time to get back in the game. It's time to make that boat a distant memory. And then move.